Welcome to the Make Living Pleasurable Show, a show for people pursuing what they love in life and not settling. My name is David Brower, also known as the Sensorial Guy, former entertainment industry executive and best-selling author, American in Paris turned lifestyle entrepreneur, pleasure coach, bon vivant, and provocateur. In each episode, with my eclectic guests, we connect you with inspiring and at times surprising teachings, messages, and experiences to help you effectively find, evolve, and savor your unique pleasurable life inside and out. Now let's get to the work of pleasure together. Thanks for joining us today. Hello, this is David Brower with the Make Living Pleasurable Show. I am excited today to welcome Jon Vroman. And we're going to talk about conscious fathering, which is quite an interesting subject because I am not a father. But I've had fathers, and I've been surrounded by, or I am surrounded by a lot of fathers. And so I really wanted to bring him on today for him to share with us what it really means to be a conscious father. So let me tell you a little bit first about Jon. But first, Jon, welcome.
Hey, thanks, man. So good to be with you.
It's going to be great. So a little bit about Jon. Jon Vroman founded Front Row Dads because he wanted to win at home and not just at work. Over the last 5 years, Front Row Dads have become a diverse group of 260 dads from 14 different countries who share a common bond of choosing to put family first as they grow their businesses. The mission of Front Row Dads is to help men deepen their connection with their children and build a family legacy that they're proud of. Outside of the podcast, there are live events, online summits. FRD has a highly engaged membership that supports each dad in aligning with his family values and staying committed to the most important people in his life. And at the end of the day, being a great dad, right? So welcome, Jon. I'm really excited to have this conversation. What an incredible mission to be here to help support fathers. How does that make you feel to be doing that?
I pinch myself at times at the fact that I get to work on being a better dad before I go, in my case, downstairs to be engaged with my family. I have an office upstairs in my home, and the fact that I get the chance to talk about this, think about this, work with other men, learn from other men, and then go try the principles that they've shared with my own family. It's incredible. And also I feel at times incredibly incapable of being the leader of Front Row Dads as I walk downstairs oftentimes and completely mess things up and then think, should I be the guy leading this community? So it's a very human experience, the whole process.
Beautiful. So tell me, what does pleasure mean to you, Jon, in your life?
Well, I think I've learned a lot about this subject from you, David. I mean, when you said you were starting a show and this being kind of the epicenter of the whole thing, I was like, yeah, of course it is. The sensorial guy talking about the pleasures behind, just about any endeavor, and the concepts that you share and that you speak about, and words that you write and you speak, like savoring something. So applicable to fatherhood, because when you talk to men who've traveled down the road and who are older, I'm talking men in their 70s or 80s that are family men that have now possibly grandkids, and they've been down the road of fatherhood for a number of years. They'll often say it goes so fast. That's the most common advice that new parents get from older parents is savor every moment, because it goes so fast. And one day you're going to blink and you're going to be like, where did it all go? And I understand that more and more and more. Of course, I got what they said early on, sure. And I wanted to savor every moment. And yet still I find myself in this present day with a 12-year-old boy and a 7-year-old boy asking myself, where did it just go? Like, where did the last 12 years go for my son Tiger? And it is a daily practice to be in the moment and to find pleasure in the little things. Find pleasure in the daily activities, whether it's dinner time with the family, which can be stressful. And it's not just naturally pleasurable to sit down and have dinner with the family. It can be super stressful unless you work to find what's pleasurable. It's like eating good food where you can just inhale it and you can swallow every bite unconsciously, or you can really pay attention to what's there. And you can really enjoy that. So when I was younger, I used to want to speed everything up and go faster, more efficiently. How quickly can I get more things done? And now at 46 years old, I'm asking, how can I slow things down? How can I stretch the days so they're longer? How can I make this moment last so that I can really, carry this with me in my heart as I move forward and as my kids move forward?
It's beautiful. Thank you for all of that. And tell me, what does it mean to be a conscious father?
Well, I think it's in the similar vein of what we were just talking about, and when you're conscious with something, you're fully present to it in this now moment, right? When you're conscious, you're also feeling all the feelings. And fatherhood and life, of course, brings with it a whole spectrum of emotions. And when I was younger, again, I'll just use my own experiences. I was trained to look for the good. I was in a sales organization that was brilliant in its culture of finding the gift in the challenge. And I loved learning how to do that. I loved seeing the bright side of things. I loved that positive attitude and that mentality that, hey, what's the good in this? Right? That's a beautiful way of going about life. It also has a dark side. And the dark side of all that is that you're not feeling all your feelings. You're like, I feel bad. Well, I don't want to feel bad. So I'm going to do something to feel good. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go talk with a friend. I'm going to go eat something amazing. I'm going to go, and you can find pleasure in so many different ways. And I think that when you are conscious, you're experiencing the full range of human emotion. So if I feel bad, that might be an indicator of something. That might be a clue that there needs to be some healing done. There needs to be something paid attention to, right? If I just ignore that ache in my knee, well, I might win over people in a moment when they say, oh, he's so brave. He just powers through. And you can win some accolades from your peers for just pushing through adversity. Man, that guy lost his dad, and the next day he was back at it or whatever. And then there's a part of me that cringes when I hear that and saying, man, we need to feel all those feelings. I have a new friend, Charles Clay, here in Austin, and he does a lot of healing work with men. And one of the things he said recently to me is that he doesn't want to just feel better. He wants to feel more. I don't just want to feel better. I want to feel more. And this is a theme within Front Row Dads right now, especially within my small group. We have these small groups of 4 guys that we call bands. And one of the things that we're acknowledging in our band is that we don't want to just gloss over what's not good. We want to fully immerse ourselves in that. And the bright side of that, David, is when we feel the heaviness of something, we then have contrast to appreciate the lightness of something as well. So if we really want to experience the pleasures of life, we have to spend time in those things that might not be as pleasurable and sit with the suffering or sit with the pain and just feel into it deeply so that we can be in our fullest expressions as humans.
That's great. Really, really great message. And why do you think we have this impression, or maybe I'm projecting here, this impression that fatherhood is so hard today?
Well, I think that can come from a couple of different places. First of all, it depends on what dads you're talking to, right? Because I think that our culture, in our community, with our 260 men in 14 different countries, you would find probably a very different type of dad than what you find maybe globally represented through ads, TV shows, movies, and what may be perpetuated in this media, mission to make dads look like bumbling idiots. You know, you look at a lot of the TV shows and it's like the dad walks into the room and it's like, do, 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 do. Like dad's the idiot who can't do anything and he's always late on the jokes and he's always telling bad jokes or whatever it might be. But it's not painting the picture of a strong man who's leading his family and, you know, and really showing up strong for his kids and powerfully for his wife and as a leader in the community and able to make confident decisions for his family, knows who he is, knows what the family values are. That's a man that we want to help support in front row dads. And I think that what you find is that a lot of people around the world will paint men as the opposite of everything I just shared. You know, and the guy who can't dress well, you know, like he just lost his edge. Somebody once wrote in a tweet, this is a person who, by the way, I love, meaning I respect, I love from afar. I don't know this guy personally. He's an author. He's really successful. He's one of my favorite writers. And I'll leave his name out because I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. But one of his tweets really put me off. It said, you know, I went to get a haircut and the woman said something like, do you want a dad haircut? And I don't even know what that means, honestly, but the punchline was that he said, can we all agree that if you add the word dad to anything, it makes it uncool? Dad bod, dad haircut, dad jeans, dad, whatever it is, it's like it immediately becomes uncool. And I read that and I felt myself getting angry inside because I want for myself, when I take off my shirt, I want people to go, damn, that's a dad bod right there. That's what I'm talking about. I want when I walk into a room for people to go, that guy has presence, that guy has power, and that's a dad who, you know, who is really owning his 46-year-old self in the biggest of ways. We are, as in the US, we have a culture that oftentimes casts aside our elderly. You know, it's like, hey, you're out of it. We're just going to put you in a nursing home and good luck, versus looking to our elders with great admiration and respect for the wisdom that they have. So I think that what we're trying to fight against is a cultural narrative that we want to redefine, rewrite as we move forward for front row dads.
Lots of tricky things there. And how are you seeing that you can evolve men in FRD, or is it a lot through conversation, or their experiences?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Do you actually get into beyond just this dialogue together and conversation, which is a huge thing? Relationship obviously is huge.
So there's a number of different places that I can take this one, but let me say this, that our framework is relationships, resources, and results. That's the framework. Everything we build, we look at that model and say, first, is what we're building right now for front row dads going to strengthen the relationships amongst the men? So while we are not shaping them into an evolved anything, they are shaping themselves and each other into something. So as a team, a leadership team, as the owner of the company, my mission is to create a space that is going to support them in becoming the man that they want and choose to be, right? So that is what we want to do, is create a space for them to do it. I've said from the get-go that I didn't start the group because I have all the answers to being a great dad. I started the group because I wanted answers myself. So I'm not the guru. People won't come into Front Row Dads and they won't come in and learn from Jon Vroman. All right, it's time for class with Jon Vroman again. Not going to happen. I'm not the expert. I am, however, an expert in building communities and creating conversations that men are not having right now, typically in their lives. So we always say that what happens in Front Row Dads are the conversations that aren't happening at a backyard barbecue. And it's because we create this intentional space and we ask big questions that most men are not asking themselves or each other. And mostly because, again, it's not set up that way. Our society is not currently set up to create this, which is why when men find Front Row Dads, they're like, I've been looking for this for years. I have been looking for a tribe just like this for years. I've never found anything like this. And when people come into one of our, let's say at our online events, which we have today, as soon as we finish this, by the way, In 10 minutes after we wrap up, I will be entering a Wealth and Legacy Summit. And this is a 4-hour-long event online with people from all over the world. And they will come together and they will have amazing conversations, rich conversations around the topic of wealth and legacy. What won't happen on that event, David, is we're not going to say, how much more money do you want to make? Well, let's reverse engineer. If you have made $1 million, how do you get to 2? Let's back it up and figure out. That's not it. I don't have any interest in helping somebody make an extra $1 million. What I do have an interest in is helping men to redefine what true wealth looks like in their life. To talk about, if they do have wealth, how they are talking about that, how they are with their families, how they are protecting their kids from too much wealth, which can be equally as hurtful as not having any money. And if I had to choose, of course, between having money and not having money, I'd rather have money. But many of the people in our community have amassed a certain amount of wealth that, by the way, becomes a hindrance in their lives. Kids that grow up with everything handed to them aren't necessarily better off, right? When everything is just delivered by Amazon and a chef is preparing your meals and somebody else is doing all your push-ups for you, you don't develop resilience and strength. So we want to have the conversations that typically aren't happening for men. And so you said it earlier, like, that's it. Guys will leave our event and they will say, I had this amazing conversation with this other guy. And by the way, we formed this accountability connection. We're going to check in with each other every 2 weeks now going forward, and we're going to hold each other to this standard. I've seen it happen with our fitness category, where men will partner up with somebody and get into the best shape of their lives. I've seen men get together in those small groups that I referenced earlier, we call bands, and have incredible conversations around emotional intelligence, right? And how they're managing their anger. Because a lot of guys look like they have it all together on the outside, but behind closed doors, they're a wreck. They're yelling at their wife. They're yelling at their kids. But to the public, they just look like they're the perfect guy, right? On Facebook, it looks like the perfect family. But behind closed doors, there's real trauma. And that's not me throwing stones at those men. That's me saying, look, we've all been there. There's a lot of guys who will understand that. And we need to just not bury it and pretend like nothing's going on and put on the mask, but we need to fully reveal ourselves and be vulnerable and have some conversations. Say, look, I'm yelling at my kids more than I should, and I just really am looking for some resources. How have you guys navigated that space? And by the end of the day, man, these guys have had such incredible conversations. They're walking away with the resources they need. It might be a book suggestion. It might be watch this movie. It might be a story that another brother shared where they just gave them a pathway and a light and a map to get to where they want to be. And they could see somebody else doing it. And then now they have hope again. And they've got a plan. And then they've got a crew, an accountability crew, to make sure they get the results that they want. Hey, we're going to check in on you and just let's see how it's going and let's follow up.
Yeah, it's all the great stuff. There's so much there to unpack. What comes to me just in the moment is, what are some of the powerful questions that you're using with the men in your different groups? And maybe you want to break it into the 3 or 4 categories or something that you are most focused on. But what are the killer questions, if you're able to share, that you want you want them to be talking about with each other and maybe even bringing into their families?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. You're really dialed in here, but this is our journal that we mail out to all new members. And can you see what's written? It says killer questions, like literally in writing.
Yeah,
that's it. We give men these questions. We bring them up all the time, in our retreats in person, which we have twice a year, and we have 50 to 60 really amazing guys that come together and have these deep dialogues for 3 days. They take a step away from their family. And somebody might say, wait a minute, like, how does that make you a better dad to leave home? And I'd say, to me, that's the easiest thing of all. Like, when my wife goes away for a weekend retreat, to nourish her soul, to get healthy, to have time to think, to plan for the future, she always comes back with so much more love to give to the family. Our men are the same way. This isn't a bunch of guys sitting in a bar, drinking beer, watching football, and talking about how bad their wives are. This is really getting into the work and asking the big questions. And, there might be a little bit of, sometimes you need to release something. Sometimes you do need to vent and just get it out. But most of the dialogue is around, here's what I want. How have you all achieved this? And then they get these personal experiences. So here's a question, here's a couple of questions, right? We give questions for the family. And here's one with some context. Simple question, powerful story. The question is, what did you do better this week than you did last week? Simple question, right? What did you do better this week? It's nothing mind-bending. We've all heard that question before, asked ourselves or asked others. But Dan Sullivan, who is the founder of a company called Strategic Coach, he is one of the biggest entrepreneur coaches in the world. And Dan was a guest at one of our online summits, and he had just written a book with a guy named Benjamin Hardy called The Gap and the Gain. And what he talked about was the difference between happy entrepreneurs. So let's just say in your case, entrepreneurs who experience real pleasure in their businesses are the ones who are focused on where they were and where they are and the progress that was made, the gains in their life. Where was I? Where am I? Where did I gain? The unhappy entrepreneurs, the ones lacking real pleasure in their lives, are the ones that are focused on where they are, where they want to be, and what's missing. It's always like, what don't I have? Now, simple idea, again, but I'm so grateful that this was brought up because we had a real chance to talk about this question, and I started realizing that a lot of my parenting, a lot of my time with my older son, Tiger, was focused on what he wasn't doing. Did you do your homework? I knew the answer was no. Okay, you've got to get that done. What was missing? What have you not accomplished? And without great intention, I wasn't able to sit down and say, hey, buddy, what did you do better this week than you did last week? Or where are the gains? Where were the wins? Where are you making progress? You look at a week and it's like a report card, right? Here's what you didn't do. Here's where the question that you missed on the test. Everything's focused on what you didn't do, where you were wrong, where you fell, where you failed. And now the question becomes, well, where did you win? What strength did you use? What progress did you make? This was, when you look at some of the best sports coaches in history, this is what they did. It was a competition against yourself as a player, and it's a team. And were you making progress? Could you show the gains? Where were you winning? And then that builds great momentum. So simple question, but oftentimes it's so simple we won't ask it because we underestimate the power of that question. Where were your gains this week? So I do a weekly meal with either child back and forth, alternating weeks. So 1 week it's Ocean's week, 1 week it's Tiger's week, and we go out and we have a dinner, breakfast or something. And my question now has become, what happened that was better this week than it was last week? Where did you make gains? And so because of Front Row Dads, because of the community, because of the guests, because of the question, because of all this, my conversation with my son is now changing.
And he's getting ready every time you go for dinner to answer that question. So he's saying, God, what did I do better this week than last week? Yeah,
That's right. And sometimes he doesn't know. Sometimes his answer is, I don't know. I mean, he's 12, right? So sometimes the answer is like, I don't know. And I'll say, well, here's what I noticed. Here's what I saw you do. I saw you really practiced your violin on Tuesday longer than I'd seen you practice it in a while. Hey, I really saw that you were really supportive of your brother a couple times this week. And I just made note of that. And I was like, man, that's really cool that Tiger walked in and checked on him when he wasn't feeling well or something like that. So now I'm starting to pay attention to, because if I want to come to the dinner or the breakfast or whatever with some gains, I better be watching.
Yeah, and I think positive reinforcement is something that's so underutilized in the world. I always say to myself, when somebody stops at a crosswalk to let me pass a car, I thank them, I mean, maybe they would have run me over, but nonetheless, right? I thank them for doing what they're supposed to do. And maybe they stopped when they didn't have to, but I'm thanking them, and I always feel kind of strange when someone doesn't thank me when I do something. I'm like, well, I'm doing something positive. Why aren't we, celebrating each other when we do something that is good? And I think that you highlight that in people, so we see that more, especially when you're young. I get the impression that you're in school and you're getting so much about what you're not doing well, right? It's you got to work on this, you got to work on it, which is, I guess that's okay. but about the positive reinforcements, I'm not always so sure that that's where it is. So is there a difference between being a stepfather versus a father in terms of your relationship to your kids? I mean, do you have a lot of stepfathers in your group that are trying to find a way to, kind of become the second dad, or who knows if the other dad is there or not? But if there's kind of a different dynamic, and obviously we know that divorce rates are let's say 50% in some of the big cities, mostly around the world. So how does that play out in the group?
Yeah, well, how I would answer that first is that I can't speak from personal experience because I'm not a stepdad and I didn't have a stepdad. So I will only speak from what I've seen in other men in our community and some of the things I've witnessed them talk about or explore when they are stepdads. We have different channels that men can communicate through in our community, and one of them, so through Telegram we use, and there is a channel dedicated for men that are in this exact situation. Mm-hmm. So they have now found each other. So they communicate to each other about some of the unique challenges that they face. Now, what I've heard and what I've witnessed, and I think is really beautiful, is that every situation is different because it's so dynamic, because mom or both moms or both dads or both families, if there is a blended situation, they all have different opinions, each brother and sister, the cultural family dynamics. It's all so different that really what each man needs to ask is what works within their family for them, what words they choose to use, how they describe things, how they navigate those very interesting and unique situations really just requires a lot of care and a lot of attention and a lot of engagement. I think what most men will say, whether they've adopted children or they're a stepfather or they're a father figure, is they try to treat everyone in their lives with the same amount of respect and love, because everybody is simply a human being that deserves that. And we like to give titles to things because we like to categorize things and put things in order, and we like to understand the definitions. But for a stepdad that might be listening, I would say it's important that he himself sit down and define what that is, how he views it, what is the actual purpose of a stepfather, and realize that other people are going to have their own definitions. I don't think we need to ever agree the role of a stepfather or what they should or shouldn't do. I think that's a very personal experience. But I do love to hear when stepdads are like, I treat every child like they're my own. I treat every child the same level of respect and love. To me, that's a sweet spot.
Fair enough. And I don't see in the description of FRD any mention of people's wives. I mean, no one's coming in there to learn how to be a better husband? Did I miss that word in there?
No, it's okay. Sometimes if you try to cover everything in the beginning, it doesn't work out. I think what brings men to our community is being a better dad. But we have, and it's on my wall right here next to me, is our 6 pillars of Front Row Dads. And so we look at the years, this journey that we take together, and every 2 months we switch through these pillars that we've laid out. January and February is wealth and legacy, right? March and April is vibrant health. And then we go on through the year to go through parenting and marriage and emotional mastery, right? Business evolution. We tackle these different subjects because we want to create some momentum within each of them. Now, we'll talk about all subjects all year long, but theming out the year takes us on this journey, because when we try to change everything, we change nothing. So we really need to just say, all right, let's check in. How's this category in your life? And when we do get to marriage, this is a big one. Here's what I'll share. Our first ever retreat was in October in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the U.S. This is 2016. This is 2016. And the whole goal was to talk about fatherhood. The only rule was no business talk. And one of the things that I was shocked by was how much guys wanted to talk about their marriage. And what I quickly realized is you can't separate those two. That if you want to have an amazing family, a lot of the pain and struggle that men were experiencing with their kids was a result of their marriage. Not aligning on how to discipline the kids, not aligning on how many presents to buy for Christmas, not aligning on whether or not they should get that, that iPad or how much screen. I mean, anything. There's just so many ways to view parenting. And when you're not aligned, it can create a lot of problems. And then kids, as they grow up, are really good at pitting one parent against the other. And it's so being in a relationship with a spouse is hard enough if it's just the two of you. But when you add the dynamics, right, of a child or multiple children, or in some cases, we have men with 7 kids, that's a lot going on. You realize that when you can't lock the door, or you have young kids and everybody's in fight or flight thinking the child's about to stick a fork in the outlet all the time, then you're not as relaxed. And when you're not as relaxed, you're probably not having as much sex, right? Because it's hard to have sex when there's a saber-toothed tiger in your house. Biologically, we know that if you go back, like those two don't go hand in hand. So if you're constantly on edge and you're constantly lacking sleep, and your body's out of whack and all these things as you're having kids and building a family, like all of a sudden, dad feels like he's jealous of the kids that are getting all the attention from mom now. And right, it's just so much. Mom might have been a career person and now she might be at home with the kids and losing some of her identity at work. And because of all this, there's so much stress at home that all of these pieces need to be worked on collectively. They need to be looked at. How is your health as a man? I can tell you when my health was really off 3 years ago, I was dealing with some health stuff. It was very hard to be a great husband and a great dad. My patience was nowhere near where it once was because I just wasn't feeling good. Right? So I was much quicker with the kids and they didn't understand. They're just like, I'm a bad kid. And I'm like, no. It's just, I'm not feeling well. But they took it as like, what did I do wrong? Why am I a bad kid? You can see there's so much going on at home. That's why many of us end up in therapy later in life because there's so much.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And you are in a beautiful marriage. How long have you been married, if you'd like to share?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, we've been together for 15 years now.
15, getting up there. Nice.
Yeah, it's
beautiful
wild.
Beautiful woman, beautiful lady. What a mother. I'm curious for you. What is the most pleasurable? Maybe 2 or 3 things. What's the most pleasurable thing about being a father? And 2 or 3 things about what's the most challenging thing for you personally about being a father?
Yeah. So pleasurable, my youngest son, Ocean, is 7, and he still cuddles with me. And so last night, as an example, he wakes up in the middle of the night, he has a nightmare, he comes into our room, and he just snuggles up next to me, right? And it is so awesome to just snuggle with my son, just to be with him, in that quiet space. He's got a lot of energy. So when he's just laying down and like just sleeping in my arms, man, I really love that. That is such a great spot. And I used to come down in the morning early before the rest of the family, and he would be the first one up and come see me. And he would just waddle into the room, this little naked 4-year-old body just rolling out of bed. And he would walk up to me on the couch, and the old me would have been like, hey, buddy, good morning. Do you want some breakfast? I would have tried to turn on a cartoon right away. I would have tried to get him set up so he wasn't in my way, so I could do my things that I needed to get done, right? Because I told myself all these things were so important. And then as I matured as a dad, he would come into the room and I would say, how quickly can I put everything away and give him my full attention? And my morning meditation would be my son. I would hold my son in my arms, this little naked 4-year-old body, and I would just be like rubbing his back, just tickle his back as he would like snuggle up into my neck, and I would just rub his back. And all I would do, David, is I would try to do that for as long as I could without doing anything else. And it was very difficult for me to not be productive. It's very difficult for me to slow down because, as I've shared before, like, I have no problem going to work. Work ethic is not my issue. I realize for some people that might be their problem. Like, how do you get motivated? How do you get going? How do you work for hours and hours and hours toward? Never been my problem, right? What's hard for me is actually stopping work, right? What's hard for me is slowing down and just pausing to just be with my son. I used to try to regulate my breathing to his breathing. I used to try to sync up our breath pattern. He'd be breathing and I would be breathing, and I would see if I could match his, and then I'd see if he'd match mine. And I would try to lengthen my breaths and just slow my breathing and see if I could slow his breathing at the same time. I wouldn't tell him what I was doing, but I was just engaging the rhythms, right, of our breath together. Those types of things have honestly been the most enjoyable pieces of being a father. And I used to think it was always going to be about like being at the Little League game and seeing him smash a home run. And then he runs over to me and he's like, "Papa, I couldn't have done it without all your coaching of how to swing." Like, you think about these traditional Hallmark type moments of being a dad, or you think what they need to be, right? Yeah. And when your kids are around other parents, and other parents are like, "Your kids are so amazing. You're such a good father." It's this type of bullshit. But for me, I found that, some of those most amazing moments, those pleasurable moments, are the most simple ones, the very, very simple moments. I have found the most joy and peace through those moments.
What I love about that, before you go to the to the more challenging side of things, is like with savoring, like with appreciating life, like with getting the most pleasure out of the moments in life. It's a lot about the ability to bring your awareness, your presence to the present moment, and to be fully there, to be unwaveringly there. And I think that in a performance culture, we've sometimes lost the wisdom that there's like an overlapping, integrated value to doing what you were doing with your son, meaning that it's pleasurable, meaning that you're learning to slow yourself down, you're learning to be present, and using this loving moment as an exercise to become maybe more focused. It is a meditation. It's just this really prolonged ability to really be there, right? To really be there. And I can only imagine that some of the greatest fathers in your group are those that are able to really be there, even if they don't have a lot of time with their kids. I imagine they're, being able to really be there, and probably in the moments like you're describing, the more private ones, the more intimate, cuddly ones, those kinds of things probably have a bigger impact on children. And I'm not a specialist in this, but it would seem to me have a bigger impact on the emotional and psychological and well-being of children, as well as the parent, than almost any of the other stuff. Does that sound fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really enjoyed this conversation a lot because it gets me thinking, what do I believe about what you just said? And I believe that having a home base, a place to return to, a place to heal, a place to recenter is the most important thing. Because look, it's all going to get chaotic. You're going to fight. Your kids are going to yell at you. You're probably going to yell at your kids. You're going to hate them. They're going to hate you. And I know hate's a strong word, but that you probably will feel that way at times. And you'll go through this incredible roller coaster, all these ups and downs, these highlight moments, and then these tough moments. But if you can have a place to return to get reconnected and recentered, if that becomes your rhythm, if that becomes something always available to you, to where you can just he can crawl into my arms, literally or figuratively, and we can just go, hey, it's all okay, right? You're okay. I'm okay. We're okay. We got this. That somehow a coming back to normal, and I say normal as in like this, like place we know, the smells, the sounds, the the feeling of being home, right? However you define your home, but that to me is it. For Tatiana and I, it's the same thing. Like when we fight, oh my God, it can be so brutal, so nasty, so unbelievably horrific when we fight where we're both like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And yet we somehow have found a way to ritualize that coming home to each other, where we can hold each other in our arms, and just, there's a knowing also that, look, we're not going to be able to address everything that was said, all the dynamics of your soul and my soul and the complexity of those two souls together. Like, we can try to hash through it all, but sometimes that hug where you just go, everything's going to be all right, is like, that's the medicine that we need.
I love it, Jon. So tell me, a few challenges for you personally in your fathering.
Sure. Well, I brought it up a couple of times where I talked about anger, right? Or losing my cool. That to me is the greatest struggle of fatherhood, is not being present, so my friend Jim Dethmer talks about being present as being in this now moment, in a non-reactive, non-triggered state, right? So if you're in this now moment in a non-reactive, non-triggered state, that to me, that's my work. When I get into arguments, when I look and I'm punishing the person and not the behavior, right? When I'm looking at my kids with that look of shame, like, how could you? Versus, hey, you made a mistake. Let's grow from this and learn from this. That all has to do with how I'm showing up to that moment. That's all about whether I'm in a non-reactive, non-triggered state. So you might say, well, technically what I said was okay, but the way I said it was with a big fuck you, wrapped up in it. So how you say things is so much more important than even what you're saying. It's the energy that you bring to that, because we've all been there where somebody's saying something with their mouth, but you don't believe a word that's being spoken because their energy says something totally different. Yeah. And we know that energy. We learn that over time, and kids got great bullshit detectors. So my greatest challenge as a dad is maintaining, a non-reactive, non-triggered state. And the truth is, I don't ever think I'm going to get to the point where I'm never triggered or never reactive, but I'll certainly shorten the amount of time that I stay in that space. And then I could be conscious enough even to admit that I'm there. Hey guys, I'm triggered. I'm really reactive right now. So I'd love to just take a breath. I'd love to go for a walk, and I'd love to come back to this, because I want to be, as Jim calls it, above the line. He views it that you're either above the line or below the line. Yeah. And I don't think that's his original concept. It's probably been taught by many over the years. But this idea that if there is a line, when you're below it, you're angry, fearful, reactive, triggered. When you're above it, you're operating from a place of curiosity, love, acceptance,
trust.
Yeah. And so I need to work to either just say I'm below the line and be okay with that, and just say I can accept myself for being triggered. I'm a human. I can love myself through this moment. However, I know that I'd love to be able to look at situations productively from both places, but I'd love to move myself to a place where I'm above the line eventually, and then come at challenges from that angle.
Beautiful. Do you ever feel like you're over spoiling your kids, or
all the time
providing too much privilege?
I think that's a challenge.
Much covered, too much convenience, too much.
Yeah. You grew up with a little bit of wealth too, so I know you get this, right? It's like, I had a moment, I don't know when it was, a couple years ago, something broke, and Tiger's comment was, oh, no big deal. We just order another one on Amazon. And I thought, that's not a healthy approach. But he probably learned it from me. I probably literally something broke, and I said to Tatiana, I go, it's no big deal. We just buy another one on Amazon. And in those very simple moments, we create all sorts of beliefs and blueprints for our families about what we care about and how we view things. And so I've become more conscious of that over time. I think that, when I was younger, I wanted to outsource everything. I'd look at my life and say, what's not helping me to grow my business or make more money? This is what they teach in seminars, right? When you're like, hey, what's your time worth? What's their time worth? So we hired a house cleaner. We even had to the point where we were getting our food prepared for us, And at some point you go, well, what is that doing for a child when they don't have any experience with cleaning up their room or doing laundry, right? Like, hey, pick up your room. Well, why would I do that when the housekeeper could do it? Why would I learn how to cook when I could just push a button and have it arrive? And then all of a sudden you've created an incredibly, in some ways, fragile child, right? Because they haven't toughened up. They haven't actually learned how to work their muscle. And so they literally have atrophied to the point to where they're fragile. You need some stresses, positive stresses, healthy stresses that can build muscle. You need to be exposed to viruses so that your immune system can be built. You need to put strain on your body so that your bones will strengthen, that your muscles will strengthen. You need to, in some ways, callous a little bit so that you are capable of dealing with what life brings to you. And yet at the same time, you don't want to be so hardened and so obsessed with doing all the things by yourself that you can't experience life. You're like, no, I can't go enjoy myself because I need to prove that I can work hard. And I think there is a sweet spot. There is a balance there between all these things, but I don't want to create a suffer-free environment for my children. I don't want to create a pain-free environment for my children. I want my kids to come to me and go, I'm bored. So I can say, good. Because from boredom there's so much good that's built into the world because somebody was like, I was bored, so I made up a game. I was bored, so I painted a painting. I was bored, so I built a business. Or just accept that it's okay to be bored sometimes and learn to sit with that suffering. But as parents, I'm bored. I can't deal with you asking me that anymore. So here's the iPad. Here's the TV. Just get out of my way so I can focus on the things I need to do. Yeah. Right? Or the parents think that they just need to keep making more money or putting whatever it is. And I get there's a certain amount of money that's very, very helpful. But, one of my friends who's extremely wealthy said, John, this whole comment about, preparing food, I realized I want to cook with my kids. There's a tremendous benefit of being in the kitchen and preparing foods. I mean, look who I'm speaking to right now, the guy who I want to be at his dinner table all the time because of what you create around food and the experiences that you make possible. Imagine removing all that, just having it delivered in a box with no story, with no magic, without where did this prosciutto come from or how long have these cherries been soaking in whatever liqueur, whatever it is. That's the beauty.
Yeah.
By the way, that's an inside story I was referencing for those. It's like, where is that all coming from? When I was in Paris, my friend, another couple, and my wife and I, we went to David's house for this incredible dinner. And it was just watching David work his magic in the kitchen and the story behind the food, where it came from, what market, why this is such a special, a special treat, if you will. And it was just so beautiful. It was a story behind it. But what you did, David, in your place in Paris is exactly what we're trying to create at times in our home. You can't do what you did every day. That would just not be sustainable per se, but you can have special moments like that. And when you bring friends over that to me is, but I might say, if I do that, that's not the most efficient way to do it. You go, well, fuck efficiency in that situation. Let's go for meaning. Let's go for connection. Let's go for what feels right in our soul. And as we get so entertained in our current world, as we can pick up our phones and our TVs and just have constant entertainment, we can numb ourselves away and we can numb our children away right into self-destruction. I believe the whole society will implode on itself if we don't figure out how to get conscious again, get our lives back again, get present to what matters most to us, and make our own decisions and not have other people dictate what our lives are supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an epic dinner, wasn't it?
Epic.
So I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to figure out where to find you, what else you want to share with us about your activities, these types of things. Why don't you take a moment to do that, and then we'll transition maybe for one more question, and then we'll finish the show here. Okay?
Cool. Well, if you're a dad or a dad, then frontrowdads.com is the place to go. Frontrowdads.com is the place to go. If you wanted to connect with me, social, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., Jon Vroman, Jon, last name Vroman, Vroman. So Jon Vroman, you can find me, but I want to meet the men who desire to be family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. And we see our community growing to 500 people and then 1,000 and then 10,000 people all over the world who are, joining forces and saying, we want to redefine what fatherhood looks like, what being a man looks like. For us, we want to decide what that is. We want to create that as a community, and that's what I want to have, is a safe space for people to have those conversations, a place where they can trust their brothers to dig in deep. So frontrowdads.com. There's a podcast, Front Row Dads Podcast. If you're listening to this and you like listening to things, then check out some of those shows. We've had incredible guests. The guy I mentioned earlier, Jim Dethmer, did a whole thing about being present. Zach Bush was on talking about the evolved father, Hal Elrod talking about the miracle morning, and other just amazing people who I know many of that are friends with you as well, David.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sean. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing in the world, how you evolved over the last years. It's really beautiful. I'm really proud of you, if I can say that. And
sure, I'll take that.
And in admiration of you gathering people in this way, because you're talking about the way that you gather people. Sounds a lot like some of the ways I do things and some of the groups and things that I've been part of. And I particularly really liked your way of saying how you, for certain themes, you brought people in and they cannot talk about their work. That's always been an iconic thing in the live events that I've done, is to liberate people from that and to open them to all these other parts of their life that makes them a good father over being just a good businessman, right? It's not, so you can have both. So I think you're really fathering that into the world in a beautiful, powerful way. And I encourage everyone to reach out to you who is interested to learn more and connect more and be a part of this, amazing community. So traditionally what happens here on the show is I let the guests close the show. And I think we'll just jump into that because we're running along here on time. And basically, I just want to leave it to you, Jon, to pass whatever it is, the message that you want to pass to our listeners here about conscious fatherhood and the pleasures in that and the meaning of that and the value of that and whatever else you really want to leave us with. I leave you to finish the show today.
Well, thank you, David. Great to be here with you. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff, man. It's so fun and so meaningful. My invitation to anybody listening would be first to explore the relationship that you had or didn't have with your father. And I would encourage people to start there, regardless of who you are listening to this at whatever stage or age you are in life, that could be an interesting place to begin, a painful place to begin, a joyous place to begin. We all have these different experiences. In that, I would also encourage people to explore the relationship they've had with father figures in their lives. So it may not be your father, by blood, but it could be a father that was a person who showed up at a time that was a father figure. And what did you learn from that person? And sit with the gratitude of that as a starting place. The second thing I would encourage you to do is that if you are a dad, I want to speak directly to you, and that is, first of all, know who you are and know yourself deeply. Take the steps needed to dig into your own head and heart and understand what is the makeup there to the best of your ability. And that if you are new to that work, then, embrace that journey. It's going to be a wild ride. And I also want to address the people who might be in their 40s or 50s who've done some work, who went to a Tony Robbins event or did some therapy at one point or read a book on understanding yourself. And be careful of the ego wanting to protect you by saying, I know myself, right? I figured it all out. I don't need to read any more books. I don't need to sit in meditation. I don't need to have a conversation, right? I've done the work. It's okay to have a knowing about yourself, because there is something powerful in saying, I know who I am. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. I am confident in making decisions. There is power there. So I'm not saying that it's inappropriate to get to a place where you can say that, because I have both said it, felt it, and seen other people say it, and it feels powerful. In that space, I want to just encourage you to play in the open space of confidence and humility. To me, that's the best front row dad. The best human is the one that plays in the space of confidence and humility. The confidence to say, I've got this today, right? I'm going to wake up and address what I need to engage with today with my full being. And I'm capable, right? I can do this. I can learn, I can grow. And at the same time, they have that humility in that moment to know that while they can choose left or right, they can choose to go forward or retreat, that they're still tuned in to the lessons that are being brought to them by nature, by the community that they're a part of, and by the wisdom that is given to us by other people. So in summary of all that is just play in the space of confidence and humility as you go forward. But please, please know who you are and take your counsel from within and from your divine source, whatever God you follow, however you define that source of your life, and be very aware and conscious of people telling you how to live your life, telling you what decisions to make with your body, telling you how to behave. That I would say be very cautious and aware of a world where somebody else wants to control you for their own good, or what they think is their own good or a community good. That we need to be independent souls collected together, but respecting everybody's decisions that are theirs to make on their own, and that to own that yourself.
Let that sink in. And with that, I want to thank you, Jon, for being on the show. And thank everyone else for listening here. We'll see you on the next Make Living Pleasurable show. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, David.